Life LDC with my March update. It's Wednesday, April the 4th, and I'm just going to give you an overview of what's been happening around here crafty-wise in my year of Fairisle knitting. I was hoping that March would be a little bit quieter because, you know, the intensity of knitting Lyric, you know, I'd been knitting full out on Lyric for 4 months. So I decided to give myself a little break, and I'm sure like all of you, either you did or you did not go to EYF, the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Seems like half the knitting world went and the other half stayed home, like Cinderella. So we're very lucky because we can watch all of the EYF videos that all of the bloggers and everybody else put out. So I did spend quite a bit of time doing that because I was knitting. And so I made an EYF 2018 playlist. You'll find that on my YouTube playlist section. And I picked what I thought were the best from my point of view. Because I'm not, I don't like speckles. I'm not really into speckles. So a lot of the bloggers, the V-bloggers that are really into speckles and indie dyed yarns and that, you know, they really focused on that. I watched it, but I didn't put it in my playlist. My playlist includes a really great 13-minute overview of the whole EYF. Watch it, you'll feel like you're there, you get all the excitement. It looks at all of the booths. And then there was also something that I think is in one of my highlighted videos, the Meet the Shepherd Shepherdess event that was held on the Sunday, because that was local, very small, self-producing, I guess, farm people who, shepherds and shepherdesses who produce their own yarns from their personal flocks, their private little flocks. And that, I think, would have been a fabulous event to attend. There were a few of these yarn producers that were there for the whole EYF, but some just smaller, really small, tiny micro yarn producers. They were there just for the Sunday, so I think that would have been a great event. Pause. So even though this is my year of Fairisle, I decided this month, actually quite late in the month, to knit something totally different because my hubby decided that he wanted a new sweater. And he absolutely loved, I've already knit this for him before, it's from the Rowan British Sheep Breeds collection, the British Sheep Breeds Chunky. He loved this Thwaite sweater. I knit it for him already. He's worn the thing to death. It's totally stretched out. Possibly, I think, because I might have knitted it a little bit too loose a gauge. It's the one that's on the cover. I don't know if you can see it on the cover. Let me see. There it is there. Aren't they cute with all their sheep? Anyway, this is an old book. This yarn's discontinued, but, you know, Anne's great stash of yarn in the basement. I have a bin full of it, 3 different shades. So I pulled out some that in the Jacob mid brown, the actual color that it calls for in the pattern. Who knew I had that in this? I knew that was in my stash because I'd traded somebody with that for that a little while ago. Anyway, he loves this sweater, so I decided to knit it again for him. So while I was knitting it, I watched all the EYF videos. And I had a great time, powered right through, was hoping to be done by the end of the month. I've got the body done, complete, everything, buttons, the whole cadoodle. Just have to put a little bit of fray check on the back of my buttons and then trim these off. And I've also got the sleeves. Pretty much, I would say, 2/3 done. And they're looking good too, so I tell you, I really like this. He might Might have to fight him for it when it's done, but I really like this. Anyway, so that was most of my knitting for this month. But EYF, back to EYF. The Shetland Wool Week people were there, and they have every year a patron, and they also have a free knitting hat pattern. And this year, sorry, my copy's in black and white, but this year it's called, what is it called? Merrie Dancers Toorie. It's by Elizabeth Johnston, and it's a great pattern for a hat because I love it. She's given you two different versions, either a DK weight version or a fingering weight version. So you can use various yarns like the Shetland Handspun or Jamieson Smith jumper weight, Jamieson of Shetland, either their DK weight or their Spindrift weight, fingering weight, Uredale yarns in the jumper weight, or DK in 50-gram balls. So lots of options for Shetland fingering weight or DK weight yarn. And I tell you, this is a free download. I'll put the link below. You can knit it up and practice your Fairisle stranding. It's a cute hat. I love the top. I guess the light shows it. I just love that little top bit. I didn't use the colors as suggested in the pattern. I just picked a random selection of my own. Now I think because I was knitting on circular needles, I did my 3 circular needle thing. This came out a little bit tight. I have not washed it yet. It might grow a little bit more. So I'm going to put it on here. And you can see, I have a big head. I'm just going to peek to see what it looks like. I have a big head. I have lots and lots of hair. So it's quite snug on me. I think with a block, a wash and a block, it might be fine. But it's a really cute little hat. I quite like it. So if you want to try something, a free pattern, try the Merrie Dancers Toorie on the Shetland Wool Week website. So that's one thing. Another thing that came up in the whole Fairisle Shetland world, and if you know, you'd have to be almost like completely offline to not know about this, is this Susan Crawford's Vintage Shetland project. There's been a lot of delay for personal reasons. She's back fighting fit and got this, powered through and got this epic tome. This is like an amazing book, and it's all vintage Shetland designs from the Shetland Museum that she's taken and converted to today's knitting standard patterns with sizing and everything, and little bits of information about, you know, the unique little things she found about each pattern. So this not only is a pattern book, it's something to read, it's something to look at, it's something just to keep on your coffee table and pick up here and there when you want a little bit of history, Shetland Fairisle history in your day. So I can highly recommend it. I was one of the original patrons that funded this, and it's a beauty. Came in a beautiful cardboard container to protect it, and then in a red plastic bag. I kept seeing that popping up all over Instagram, these red plastic bags. So this was absolutely fabulous, and I think you'd really enjoy it, even if you're not going to knit anything out of it. The Vintage Shetland project. I'll put a link on that to that below also. What's the matter, Daisy? So I showed you earlier this year my Fairisle style pillow that I started and at a Marie Wallin workshop and finished here at home. I love this. And at the workshop last December, we started another pillow. And I am very happy to say it's now finished. So I have 2 pillows for my couch here. Put the same fabric on the back. This one was sort of like a log cabin construction. You picked up on either side and knit out and kept going until you finished your square. This one is more of like an abstract, and we started it by knitting this piece up to here and then cast off some stitches and kept knitting here, and then knit across, picked up and knit across this way, and then picked up and kept going right out to the end. And on this side it was the same thing. You picked up stitches, but there's this cute little adorable square in the corner, and I absolutely love that. So then to finish it off, when there wasn't a cast on or cast off edge, I went around and picked up and then cast off all around the outside so I could have this edge, and I changed the color depending on what shade was used on the edge line. So the edge is sort of well, it's multicolored, and it gives it this. I feel that this is a little bit more casual looking than the other one. The other one's very, even though this is log cabin, I don't know, this one, maybe I'm just overthinking this whole thing. This one is totally square, and this one is 18 by 19, so I like that it's just ever so slightly wider than it is taller, or taller than it is wider, depending on what way you look at. I sort of like it. Again, every time I put these down, the dogs sit on them, so I have to put them away when I'm not here to protect them. So I was really happy to get this finished this month, because I really wanted to get on with my next Fairisle project, which I mentioned to you in the February update, which is Mousa. Hi, darling. So Mousa, from Marie Wallin's Shetland book. It's, let me see, I'll get a big picture of it for you. So on the Marie Wallin Fairisle, it's not called the Marie Wallin Fairisle, the Marie Wallin Knit and Crochet Ravelry group, in the Shetland thread, because we're all sitting around waiting for the next Marie Wallin publication, I said, hey, let's have a little very impromptu, casual knit along, and a few of us are knitting projects out of Shetland to keep ourselves busy while we're waiting for the next Marie Wallin book to come out, which is it's called Bloomsbury. If you don't know about this, it's because you haven't signed up for Marie's newsletter, because she's told us about this in her newsletter. It's called Bloomsbury, and it's a collection of designs done in Rowan felted tweed based on that whole Bloomsbury period in the UK. Sort of, now I think that's sort of Art Deco-ish. I could be wrong. I really need to look into that before I talk about it. Bad me. Okay, I should have looked into that. Anyway, back to Shetland. So we're having a very casual Shetland pattern knit along. It's either starting something new or finishing something that you've already got on the needles. The idea is to give yourself a goal and try and get your project finished. I would love to be sitting here when the next publication comes out, have that publication arrive, buy some yarn, and dig right into a project instead of being, oh, I've got to wait till I finish this one. I'm always in something when something new comes along, and so I'm sort of determined to have this done. I personally need deadlines. I don't know about you. Maybe you don't need deadlines, but I need deadlines. But anyway, so here it is. And in the playlist, the EYF playlist, there is a clip right at the beginning of that. I think that 13-minute, almost 14-minute review of the EYF of Marie's booth. She was right as you came in the front. She was right there outside of the podcaster lounge, and a lot of people just walked by her. I was quite surprised, but this person, you'll see it on the playlist, gave a nice panorama, and I believe Marie's wearing Mousa in that clip. I've also seen Marie wearing Mousa in person, and the key to Mousa is it has to be loose, it has to hang, it has to drape, and so I am going to make the not the largest size, but the second largest size. Now, I mentioned to you about the worldwide shortage of Jamieson's Shetland Spindrift. Well, it seems that the worldwide shortage isn't so bad in other places, but Canada does have an issue. And the first retailer I contacted told me that she expected to get a top-up of her yarn stock, and she expected to have all the shades. And then when that top-up arrived, she was still short 2 shades. And so I decided to cancel my order, and I contacted another retailer who had all the shades, and I bought the whole yarn pack from them. Why, you might think? You might question my sanity or my reasoning. Well, back in the day, you can skip over this if you don't like history, but back in the day when I sold Jamieson's from my basement business, I kept quite a big stock. I had like at least 3 bags of every shade, and my idea was I didn't like to not be able to provide all of the shades when called upon for a design. So anyway, one day I get this phone call, and there was a shade used at the time. Everybody was taking Alice Stormore designs, and remember, this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. People were still knitting Alice Stormore and still looking for substitutions. And there was this one shade called marjoram or whatever. Nobody had it. I had it because I'd been in the UK, I'd been to Shetland, I bought a bunch of bags of it, and I slogged them home here, and I had them in my stock. So, and this was critical for some particular designs of the famous Alice designs. So anyway, this one day I get this phone call, and everything was done by phone back then. You could contact me by email, but for to finalize an order, you had to phone me or to give me your credit card information. Anyway, one day I get this phone call, and it's this lady, and she wants 3 balls of marjoram. And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot sell you 3 balls of marjoram. And she goes, why, don't you have it? And I said, well, yeah, I do have it, but I save that to complete yarn packs for designs that call for that particular shade. It's unique. You can't really substitute. We've tried substituting things, and it just doesn't work. And she got really irate on the phone. I felt bad, but she offered to pay me anything to ship her these 3 balls of marjoram. And I said, well, the only way you're going to get it from me is to buy a whole yarn pack. And she didn't like that idea at all. I've already bought my yarn pack from so-and-so. And I thought, okay, fine, that's fine. But they didn't have the shade you want. Now you want me to sell you 3 balls when I could be potentially selling 20 or 24 for a whole sweater. And it turned out that this lady was writing a book about her whole epic adventure of knitting an Alice Stormore design and how hard it was to get the shades. And she went in to complain about me that this retailer, my God, the nerve of this retailer, she wouldn't sell me these 3 balls of the shade she needed. And that really stuck with me, that because now as a yarn purchaser, I want to support a retailer that will provide what I need. I don't want to cherry pick. I'll buy X amount of balls from this retailer, and then I'll go over there and buy the balls that are the shades that are harder to get from that retailer. And you know, maybe I'm just too darn persnickety. But at the time, because this shade wasn't available and I had schlepped to Shetland and brought it back, I didn't feel like selling it like that, and I felt it was my right. So I keep that sort of tucked in the back of my mind, and I try to support retailers that way. Just my own little personal flaw, but anyway, maybe it's not, I don't think it's a flaw. It's just my personal preference. I like to support a retailer wholly, and it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back to one retailer or the other. I will probably always check to see whether I get it all from one or the other before I go on to the next one, if you know what I mean. Anyway, end of rant. Back to Mousa. So, look at this. This is what I'm saying. I don't like to show things that I've bought, because by showing things, other people showing things they bought, I'm really happy and interested, and then I end up buying them. This is a Jezabelle bag, and JesabelleB. JesabelleB on Etsy. I saw this color, and I just knew that this color, complete with the striped inserts lining, was going to be perfect for my Mousa shades. So let me show you. I just love the way this armband goes down and folds over and creates a little basket for your yarn. Because when you have dogs that maybe, you know, they don't bug my yarn too much, but I don't want to tempt them either. So when I'm not knitting, I tend to put the arm back piece back up and save it. So look at how my yarn sits in here. Isn't that cute? And I'll be able to pick the strand of what shade I want, and as long as they're in there firmly, it should feed it out. And I guess as they get smaller, I'll add more balls to keep them nice and tidy. So I'm going to be starting Mousa very soon. I wanted to have it started for either March 31st or April 1st, but that didn't happen. I really need to finish my sleeves on this British Sheep Breed's chunky sweater first. So that's the plan. This has to be done, not has to be done, but my goal is to have it done for June the 1st. So wish me luck, and I'll be doing a little video things about this as we go along. So that's about it for me here. So today's demonstration, there's been a lot of conversation about steeking. Steeks fascinate everybody. The idea of, you know, knitting and then cutting your knitting, people totally they freak out at the whole idea of actually cutting their knitting until they do it. Then they do it once, and if it's successful, then they think they should steek everything, and they look at turning designs that are designed to be knit flat into knit in the round, so that then they can steek them. And there is usually a reason why a designer designs something flat in pieces and knit back and forth in pieces versus in the round. So you really need to look at the design and decide whether it makes sense to convert it to knit in the round if it was designed to be knit flat. Stranded garments in particular, people want to convert them to knit in the round. Now, Mousa is a design that is written to be knit flat, back and forth to a front piece and a back piece. Now, part of the reason for this is because, and this is a quirk of this design, I don't know if it's all the designs in this book, but when you look at the patterns in this, they are not, the motifs in Mousa They're not symmetrical. They don't stack up on top of each other like in a traditional Shetland Fairisle design. You can sort of just cut a piece out of the sweater and that would be the repeat. The repeats all seem to stack up perfectly. They're maybe offset on each other, but the math all works. Well, in Marie's designs, one motif is a 6-stitch repeat, the next one is like a 22-stitch repeat, 6 doesn't go into 22, and the next one's a 7-stitch repeat, and then there's a few rows of plain color in between these motifs, and I think that's what gives it, like, it just makes the design it just makes it new and fresh, and the colors of course make it new and fresh. I just love it. And so to size this, it's not a full repeat. It comes to the underarm and it's not a full repeat. So you have to decide if that's going to bother you, or if you're going to, you know, if your mind's going to be blown at coming to that side piece and not in full, finishing a repeat. That's possibly one of the reasons why this design was set up to be knit back and forth. If you can handle that, and I think I can, I'm just going to place a marker and I'm going to carry on as if there was a side seam there. Should work. There's no reason why it shouldn't work. And all my changes of colors will happen underneath the you know, the sides where the side seam is. I'll just leave all the ends hanging and finish thing like I normally do. Just tie them and skim them across. So I'm looking forward to doing Mousa, I think, in the round, and I reserve the right to change my opinion on that when I get to the actual knitting of it. So steeking. My demonstration today is just going to be a simple demonstration of actually cutting a steek. I did my original Fairisle Club 1 squares in the round, and I've got one that I think one, maybe two that need to be cut, and I'm going to talk about, just talk generally about steeking. And those squares were done in felted tweed. Felted tweed is wool with a little bit of alpaca and viscose, I think it is. And I have steeked that yarn successfully, and I'm quite comfortable with steeking it. I just give it a little bit of a steam and cut it, and when you sew up your garment, you just tack that those steek edges down. So that is what my my demonstration is going to be for this month. Hopefully by the end of April, I'll have some major progress on Mousa to share with you. And so I want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed, and thank you to all my returning viewers and to all of you new viewers. Please hit the like button. I gather that gets it makes YouTube suggest your videos to other people. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, because then you will get notified. If you hit that little bell beside the subscribe button, you will get notified of each video update. I won't bomb you with videos. Once a month I'll do a personal update, and I will do reviews of any publications or new yarns that come my way, either from Rowan or particularly Marie. I'm sort of the old-fashioned guard. These are my preferences in the world. Remember, I do not like speckles. Lightning didn't get me, so I guess it's okay not to like speckles. So the following will be a little demonstration on cutting of steeks, a little conversation about steeks, and after that, we'll see you at the end of April. Take care. Steek sample number 1 here is my Shetland jacket from Rowan magazine. I'll look up which magazine it was in. It's done in felted tweed Aran. It was supposed to be done in pieces, but I decided to knit it in one piece and put steeks. You can see I've worn this a lot. There's catches in it and everything, but doesn't matter. So the steek itself, I did my I usually do an 8 or a 10-inch steek, and I pick up stitches in the edge stitch to make any button bands. Just cut the steek up the middle, and in this case I've just tacked it down very generally, it's quite a lot of space in between each tacking, but it hasn't gone anywhere. And it's loosened up on the edge here. The stitches have loosened up, but the tacking holds it, and I've had this for years and worn it like tons. Steek sample 2, my hibiscus cardigan, knit in the round. The front was steeked and cut open, and yes, I've overcast this. This was Jamieson Shetland Spindrift yarn, so perfect for stranded knitting. And on the sleeves this time, I actually haven't done anything to them. The steek stitches themselves have just rolled over, and they've been there for how many years? Just hanging out, comfortable. And that's the joy of using a pure wool, particularly Shetland yarn, but a pure wool yarn that's got some sticky grabbiness to it, a more rustic yarn. Works perfectly for steeking. Steek sample number 3 is my absolute oldest hand knit Fairisle. It is a design from Alice Starmore's Pacific Coast Highway. I'll put the details on the screen here. So it was steeked. This was done in Jamieson Shetland Spindrift. It was done with a front steek, and the steek stitches have been just overcast. And also this design has a side slit, and it was also steeked and overcast. And the armholes were steeked and overcast. I've worn this tons. I've got pictures of me in the UK ages and ages ago. Wore it, still wear it, still love it. I love the length of it. Needs a good session with my gleaner to get rid of some pills. But other than that, it's absolutely perfect. Had it for years. Steek stitches haven't gone anywhere. These are my Marie Wallin Fairisle Club 1 squares, which I chose to do in the round. They've been cut. You can see that there's the center stitches of the steek stitches. They've been alternated colors. But the edge stitch I always do in the background shade. And it helps you to be able to see the row for the background. Like say if you're for picking up stitches, you can see that row. So on this one, it's this row right here. So you can see I've cut them open. They've been sitting here. It's almost 2 years, I'd say. This one's still got its ends. I haven't even trimmed them off. You can just literally go like that and trim them off. No big problem. This one's been here for a while. And I've got 2 here that I'd like to show you. This one is turned inside out, and all the edges are, like the ends are hanging here. I've started to cut it open and have trimmed the edges off. So it's very comfortable to me to do. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. So you can see this row here is the edge stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches in is where you cut. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's the other edge row here. So edge row 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 edge row. So this is the 10 stitch steek. So I'm just going to go right up the middle here, put my hand underneath so I don't want to cut the back. And people have been talking about the jog in Fairisle. There's where you can see the jog right there. That's where the rounds start and end. Now if that was at an underarm, would you notice it? I don't think so. And on a cardigan, it just gets cut off. I'm using these tiny scissors so that you can see what I'm doing. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Right up here. And here we come to the end. And there you go. If this was a cardigan, I was going to be picking up stitches. I would just cut all these off, pick up my stitches along my edge row, and fold this over and tack it down. Okay, so there you go. That's in felted tweed, even with a little bit of alpaca and the viscose in there. It still steeks well, as long as it's knitted a nice firm gauge and you've done a little bit of steaming to the fabric before you do it to let any wool fibers grab onto each other. 100% wool is best, but felted tweed works perfectly also. Okay, that's it for me in steeking. Until the April update, I hope you have a great month and happy knitting.